and welcome to the Ashen Forge. I am Phantomex, of course, joined by Diggs, Legendary Neurotoxin, and Zog is joining us as well.
Oops.
How are y'all doing?
Doing good.
Oops.
Great.
Oops, what? I heard an oops. Did I mess something up?
No, I messed something up.
Okay, good. It's not me. All right. Well, thanks for joining us. We, of course, are going to be going over today's live stream, and I'm going to link the transcript in case anybody hasn't seen it yet. There it is. A lot of just sort of a mix of questions. I guess that's how it normally is, though. It's just open question to whoever.
Well, I mean, the first thing that really caught me with the live stream today, and there's a lot of stuff that I guess they've had a little bit of stuff kind of going on in the background since the last live stream, but it feels like it's really been a slow cycle up until today. And really, the takeaway I'm getting from this is that you can launch half rabbit, half dogs with a catapult at your enemy, or something. No, it's I like that they've actually really shown how far they've gotten with the castle siege stuff. It's looking fairly good now. Obviously, the engine that they're using and the ability to make things like that look good in there is definitely a thing, but. Be that as it may, actually seeing it being used, functional, doing the stuff it's supposed to, interacting the way it's supposed to, that's pretty cool. Definitely, if you told me yesterday without me seeing this that the Castle Siege stuff is imminent, I'd still be like, I don't know, maybe. But now that I've seen that, it's like, okay, yeah, it actually seems like there's a pretty decent chance that we'll be, seeing that and testing it out here fairly soon.
Yeah, speaking of questions, I was happy to have one of my questions read on the stream. When we were doing
you were the tasteful nudity question.
Of course. Right? We have to have nudity, but it's got to be tasteful, of course. When we were doing Landmark, it's like I almost had a direct line to Omid and Dave Georgeson and Brass. So I would tweet them. Sometimes I would just do a tweet on the holidays and ask a question thinking, they'll get to it days or weeks or sometime and they'd answer like that day. Like I think I got an answer on Christmas Day once and I was like, no, I wasn't expecting to take time away from your holiday. I just wanted to let you have the question before I forgot it. But this time I'm trying to just go through official channels and not bug Toast and Margaret too much. So I almost thought about sending them some direct messages, but chose to just post in the forums and then post in the live stream chat the same question. And that seemed to work, although they probably took it from the forums. But that is a nice thing, is that they're pulling questions from forums now, which was not really happening before Margaret and Toast came on board. Stephen didn't really pay too much attention to the forums, or he wasn't actively involved in the forums. So it's nice to see the CMs looking at forums. And it seems like they used to take a lot of questions from Discord, but it seems like they really focused on forum questions this time. I'd probably prefer to see some from Discord and some from the forums, but yeah, that was pretty fun. We had a nice long list, and they went about 20 minutes over, I think, answering questions. So that was nice.
Yeah. They also, I guess, since our last show, we also had the director's letter too. So,
which announced that Apocalypse will start testing again August 20th, which I believe is a Tuesday. So I'm guessing that's going to go through the weekend, and then they'll reevaluate when the next test will be after that. But it's not going to be 24/7 immediately. It's just starting up again. The next one is August 20th, and that seems fair. It's only 3 weeks away, so it actually sounds, I'm starting to get some jitters, and I'm excited to play around. They mentioned in the live stream that the sandal that nobody has ever found, that's hidden, was it Keith, who mentions who? I don't think it was Keith. Who mentions that it was? Maybe it was the lead artist, Devin.
Yeah, there's only two people who know what it is. They changed the name of the asset, so you can't even search for it.
Well, they said
it's
that it's in a hidden location, and you get to the location by destroying stuff.
Mhm.
Which it's funny. One of the FU digs post that I got in Discord a while ago. Somebody discovered my Care Bears guide to apocalypse videos. And they were mad because I wasn't killing people. And they were like, why? You aren't even playing the game. Like, I'm exploring the areas and I'm destroying stuff to complete my quests. I'm just not killing people. It's a Care Bears guide, so you should not be surprised that I'm not killing stuff. So this means I'm going to have to destroy a lot more stuff and see what opens up so I can get to the secret area.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting, seeing how people approach that, and if people actually try to do a Care Bear approach, like go try to queue up for a game all at once, agree to not kill each other for like the first 15 minutes or something, and really search around for it.
Mm-hmm.
It will happen. Gamers do that.
Mm-hmm.
I bring up that Star Wars The Old Republic example all the time with that first PvP zone where if you actually fought, people got mad because you were delaying the take turns to get the reward system that the community had put in place. Like the community went for the path of least resistance to the reward, not let's kill as much as possible. It happened to be the Care Bear path was the best way to get it, and that's what gamers do.
Mm-hmm.
If the best way to find what they want is to not actually play the game, they will not actually play the game.
Mm-hmm.
I think we talked about that with Eve, right? Them turning off communications in order to
Oh, you mentioned that, yeah.
to try to make people more PvP-ish.
Mm-hmm. Because they had agreed not to for some reason. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I still don't think that was the way to go, but whatever.
Which is kind of interesting. Well, that's a whole nother topic. We're stuck on this show.
Yeah,
But-
yeah, we've already talked about that.
It's just that if what the community wants to do is find something that's hidden, then they're going to queue up and all work together to find something that's hidden and not queue up and fight each other. It just takes a couple people talking to each other.
They said they changed the name of the asset. Is that what you said?
Yeah, they
I don't know.
changed the name of the asset,
guess-
so the team can't even search for it in the scene and be able to find it.
But there's also a different area, so they've
But
upgraded.
it's still there, right? So I mean, it wouldn't be that hard.
Yeah, it's there. But yeah,
And it wouldn't be
it's
that
just-
hard to go through the files and find it.
I don't know how many files there are. It could be nested some real sneaky
Oh, I've looked
place.
through them. It's not.
No? Oh, all right. Well,
Well, I don't know when they
understand.
put that into the client, though. I mean, I haven't updated that client for a while because I just couldn't get into Apocalypse. So. Anyways, you think they'll make
So
August 20th? Sorry.
August
Yes.
20th is more Apocalypse, or is this
Yeah,
a
more
new-
Apocalypse.
Yeah.
No, it's more Apocalypse.
yeah, they should be able to make that then.
All right.
I mean, they've been doing what? Server and infrastructure upgrades for the past 6 months.
Yeah. And they're supposed to be waiting until they're sure they can do whatever they want to do before they announce. So I'm guessing they're pretty positive they can at least have that day. How many days it will last, I'm not sure, but I think we will be able to log in on August 20th. So speaking of Apocalypse, we should start using this middle section for screenshots at some point. But maybe when we start having more regular shows, we'll start working on that. But they did show updates to the Apocalypse UI. and it's darker now instead of bright or something like that. I don't know. I like the look of it. It was okay. They made a major change to the starting area, but it was just another elf starting area. It's supposed to be indicative of the starting area in the MMORPG, but I would have much preferred they show us some dwarf architecture or some orc architecture rather than upgrading the elf architecture, and maybe we would be closer to getting some dwarf or orc models into the game, but we're not there yet for whatever reason. I would love to get an artist to join us here on the Ashen Forge so I can cajole them into having more diversity earlier, but we'll see if we can get that done in, I don't know, before the end of this year or early next year.
Wasn't there a question about models? Go ahead. I'm just...
Nope.
Sorry, you had something you wanted to bring up.
Well, I was just kind of looking through the Q&A, and I think it's very interesting that they prioritize voice communication over text chat communication in Apocalypse, where the question was like, will there be a type chat system in the upcoming test? No, it's going to be VoIP only, and I guess that's kind of the norm now for games to come out. Like, they expect that you just talk and nobody ever types anything, but it feels so foreign to me because I'm used to being on the keyboard and like logging into Apocalypse. I don't actually have access myself, but the first thing that I have to do is that I have to talk to people if I want, like, with my voice to communicate. Like, it removes the level of separation from the actual game for me.
Isn't that so? You want separation instead of immersion?
Absolutely, I want separation. Yeah.
You're so antisocial. Interesting. Yeah, I think, and so I have this conversation fairly often in game, because I tell people that I pretty much ignore text chat when I'm playing MMORPGs, mostly because people spend a lot of time talking out of character instead of in character. They'll talk about football games or I don't know,
Chuck
all kinds of
Norris
stuff.
or yeah.
And Kirk's wife, even though it's not even WoW.
Yeah, so I'm often either in these days I would be in chat with Twitch people. So I'd be following Twitch, or I used to be following Skype. At this point, I expect to be following Discord. When Phantom X and I play, and Neuro joins us sometimes, we're in Discord chat. we played Landmark that way. I think we would be not typing as much in chat, Neuro and I. But sometimes you pay attention to local chat through text, but often I had a
TeamSpeak server for Landmark.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, we've been throwing all these names. I actually wonder, can you think of any game that successfully implemented their own voice system that people use over something like Discord or
any console shooter?
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I guess, but you have
any console shooter, basically.
That's sort of let me rephrase. In the PC realm, where you have actual access to these other clients, I can't think of a game that's actually...
Smite had integration with the Curse client previously, where you got your match was made, and then you were able to join the room. And I think that a lot of other match-made games like that, Atlas Reactor had something internal like that, where once a match was made, you had the option to join the voice room with your team. And I think that those games are pretty successful with that.
Mm-hmm.
I could see where maybe they choose that over text right now, just because of the nature of how you play Apocalypse. I guess it's probably easier to use voice than type, but
That's fine. I mean,
if you're actually killing people.
Well, directing people where you're going to go and stuff like that when you're in matched with the group. Yeah.
Letting people know that you're not going to kill them. You got to tell them somehow.
I think it's just your teammates though. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's voice is always going to be kind of a funny thing for PC users, I think. One of the other reasons why I think some people play on PC is because they can't use voice for one reason or the other. Either they have a problem speaking, or they have a problem hearing, or they the ability for them to get to hear stuff is wear uncomfortable headphones because no headphones are comfortable for them, or use speakers that make sound around and that is annoying to everyone else around them, so they can't do that. For whatever reason, some people are just restricted to the keyboard. So it's one of those things where I always keep an eye on text chat, whatever game I'm playing. Some games it's fairly rare. Some games I've got audio muted because the ability to actively take measures against somebody for being a jerk on voice chat is much more limited than something offensive they say in chat. They can just be like /report, yo, like this, they said it, do the thing. It's so that's one of the other reasons why I actually like text, is for the accountability, because we aren't at the point where voice chat interpretation or the ability to continually record audio spoken by every person ever in every match, in every game, in every raid, etc., to be able to figure out the one time they said something really inappropriate and be able to take action against them is just so much more difficult.
I think the tech is there for voice to speech to text, recording the users and saving logs of that indefinitely. There's no reason why that can't be implemented. It's just like that's more work, right? And
it's more space that a game company has to handle.
Well, depending on how they're doing it, it is a whole lot of space, but I don't know how Intrepid's architecture is for this. But, ideally now, unless you absolutely have to have things on premises, you're using a cloud provider of some kind that has a scaling pay as you use storage system. So and you can archive older things and pay less for it. Like AWS, if like messages sent more than a week ago or less relevant, so you move them to the infrequently accessed payment tier, and then 3 months later you move them to what they call Glacier, which is the deep storage. You might be able to get this if you request it in 24 hours. So all of that is just pay for it, and text, speech to text also. The library is just there. Like if you're recording voice from a user, you're passing it through and it's going in and out, and it's and runtime. So just one time through the file. You're not wasting a whole lot of overhead doing it anymore.
That's fair.
And they should be doing that, but I think that you're right that like the history of voice communication is that like you keep it private and it's peer to peer and it's not shared and it's not restricted like that. But we do have the ability now to make it very well monitored and handled. I hope that people are doing that. I don't actually know.
I expect to be streaming in any case, so I don't know if voice would come through on that. But when I think about
Sure it would.
people,
Yeah.
when I think about griefing these days, I'm like, well, I mean, I'm expecting to be streaming, so you know, and I expect devs to be checking in on my streams from time to time, or I've got good enough pull that you know. I can send them clips, but it seems like if you want to report people, it's easier to do these days. Just show them a clip. For those I mean, you know, we all stream to some degree, so.
Yep. That's one of the advantages of not being a free-to-play game is that when somebody does something and you take action against their account, it's permanent. They make a new account with a different credit card or whatever. Sure, that's on them. They'll probably end up getting that one banned too.
Yeah, and I was going to say the other thing about voice, though, one of the limitations is either role-playing another gender or wanting to be perceived as the other gender for a variety of reasons. That's
or role-playing in general, like unless you're a voice actor, unless you're good at play at having your character voice, like, I'd be totally incapable of doing that. Like, it definitely makes you when you start using voice.
kind of. I mean, I think. I mean, the level of role play that I'm expecting and hoping for is just talking about in-game stuff as if the stuff your character is interested in. I don't necessarily care about voices super much because when I'm playing pen and paper, most people did not make a elf voice or an orc voice every time.
Well, part of the
spoke.
benefit of using the internet and using a video game for this kind of thing is that you don't have to, like, that's what I didn't like about pen and paper, because I felt awkward being there, like, yeah, I'm a dwarf and I've got this paper and I'm going to do, like, no, by abstracting it and pushing it out there and separating myself back, which is a little bit the opposite of immersing in it, but I was able to play that character by being the puppeteer of the character, not going into the character. And when the character is able to communicate only by my voice, that is one more step in that I may or may not want at the time. Like in a game like Smite or League of Legends or whatever, I'm not role playing as that character. I'm not playing that character. I'm playing a team competitive game, and the voice is just about me communicating with the other humans playing the game. But in the MMORPG sense, it is different. Like, it feels weird to walk up to a dwarf and I don't know. I got a 7-year-old that plays Dauntless upstairs. You know,
I
and
know exactly
he
what
sounds
you're
like a
talking.
7-year-old boy, and I don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't want that dwarf sounding like a.
You're
7-year-old.
you're expecting that gruff, boy, how's it going? And instead you walk up and say hi. Oh, hello. Wow, that is not the dwarf I was expecting. Maybe my expectations of dwarves are wrong in this game.
Yeah. I don't know the solution, but it's an interesting problem.
Forced voice modulation. The technology exists. You can definitely like do things to force a voice into a certain range, both by manipulating the just the frequency of it and speed of it and stuff, as well as
you are required to use auto tune,
cutting out highs, mids, or lows respectively to get more of a dark deep basso versus a nice cute high lofty bright sort of voice. And yeah, I would do it with the spectral analyzer, but that's an entirely different show.
I sometimes want to look for something like autotune that could change my male voice into female voices when I'm playing female characters. But you remind me, Tsag, of I had these Activision buddies when I worked at Activision. There was a married couple. Their kid was 4, and that kid could play World of Warcraft like up to level 5. But people would be, and he could help people on quests. But people would be like, "Why aren't you speaking to me like I'm talking to you?" Well, he couldn't read. He just knew how to go and do the bits for the quests. And like,
my son has played a bit of World of Warcraft, but now he's playing Dauntless, which is great because it's totally free and it's low pressure. And Magic Arena, so he is playing a little bit of Magic and winning some card games.
Nice, yeah. While he's still able to stay detached from the actual like earnings and challenge of it. I can't play Magic the Gathering Arena. I know I've got nothing out of my pocket on the line, but I play every game as if it's like, life or death sort of thing, and I just can't have that intensity for like, a first round.
You can play it life or death for $10,000.
Yeah, no, I don't play it like. I always play it with seriousness and intensity because that's just how I want to play. But that's because I'm used to playing it with friends, so it's always very much like, the strategy and one-upsmanship of somebody in my immediate vicinity who I know, and being able to out-tactic them with this weird sort of format of game. Online it's completely different. Also, I have not invested much into it, so I usually either squeakily get through my victory, stall somebody in their strategy and they just quit, or stay a few rounds longer than most people would, and I just get destroyed.
So,
but, yeah.
Picking something else out of this, the live stream, because we kind of mentioned it, or we, I guess, talked about the question. I'm pretty sure we did a little bit. The question was, other than taxes, will the only way nodes get resources from players be by their own prerogative? Which I think we've kind of talked about that. Like, how are you? Do all you do is get to set taxes, or how are you actually going to take from players? Says, or will there be something else that forces that? People by nature are hoarders, so I can't see a willingness to give up hard-earned resources from a tiny bar to advance another fraction. And Stephen's response was, caravans also supply certain resources, which kind of confuses me. I'm not sure what he means with that. He says the majority of it will be related to resources. It's about players working together to benefit the node. A good mayor works with players to benefit the node. Money is the engine of how you incentivize the node. So I'm not sure. So is he implying that if I run put my goods onto a caravan, is there a fee for that goes to the node? Because that's what that sounds like. Because basically the question is, how are you going to get how are you going to tax players?
I think he's redirecting the tax question. I think caravans are taxed too.
Yeah.
Is what that comes down to. But I disagree with the premise of the question.
Right.
I think, and I have seen, players love watching progress bars move.
Right. And
It's been a thing in MMORPGs forever. In EverQuest, half of your progression was just performing stupid tasks so that you got the reputation you needed to be able to communicate in that zone to be able to do more things. And sometimes that involved giving them stuff that you could potentially have sold.
Right, and progressing nodes is going to get more services added, and you're going to benefit from those services and all kinds of stuff. But we even saw in Landmark, people weren't hoarding resources. I mean, there were plenty of people willing to donate resources just even to
They
see
were
something
easy enough to
cool.
get, though.
Loot cave.
Yeah, it depends on the scarcity and the value of materials, but in games, but we don't see people acting like this. We don't see people acting like hoarders. We see people actually doing whatever they can to accomplish whatever goal they're thinking about right now. And if the community goal is to progress if the community doesn't care about progressing the node, then it doesn't matter if they're not progressing the node. If the community cares about progressing the node, they will donate.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter if the nodes progress or not. If people don't want them to, they won't.
One of the things that I think about is what sort of anti-stagnation sort of things they might be putting in. Like, if you're sitting on a pile of wheat, is it going to go bad? If you're sitting on a pile of iron ore, not smelting it down, not doing anything with it, our NPC is going to slowly pilfer it when you're not looking. That sort of stuff. Is that are those the mechanisms they're going to use to try to encourage people to do stuff? Now, the other side of things that I think about, you brought something up that, like, people didn't sit around and sit on their resources in MMOs, and part of it's because there was always an obvious and tangible use of all the materials, that it was either that you're using them to skill up, and then the results of what you skilled up with, you can't break it back down into raw materials, so either you enter it in the economy or you sell it to an NPC, so you do whichever one's going to be more valuable of the two. And that's another way that things kind of got entered in, is you get raw resource, convert it into something, and then you get the skill up, you sell it. So there's the skill incentive. And I feel like that's another major one, that people are always going to want to improve their trade skills, improve their smelting and crafting efficiency, improve their resource pipelines and supply chains and everything. And so in doing that, and all of the skill ups and all of the level ups and all of the boosting and stuff that they're chasing the meters and chasing the bars and the obvious tangible benefits, the side benefit is that all the stuff that they generate is then going to end up in the economy. So I think,
and very few players have the goal of building a giant pile of stone and being happy that they built a giant pile of stone.
Just that one guy in Landmark.
What it says is they're unwilling to. They can't see willingness to give up hard-earned resources, as if, like, this whole guy's life is just getting that resource. No, people get resources because they want to use them, because they want to sell them, because they want to use them, because they will get something else out of that transaction. They're not going to see accumulating a pile of stone or even gold, right? Like, unless they're like big into economy or something, but then that's still about trading, and it's about movement of resources. They're just, getting the better end of the deal.
I do think there's a difference and when you sort of scale. So World of Warcraft, when I would play, I had no problem with my guild, people I knew, right, putting extra stuff into our shared bank, like, money, resources, whatever. I had no problem with that. That was fine. Trying to convince me to put my extra stuff or my items in, say, the Ironforge bank, where everyone has access, that's a little different. And so that's where I could see there is sort of a difference between sharing your goods with close friends versus, hey, I'm going to give it to the mayor. Now there's obviously a long-term goal that makes sense, but I also think most players don't necessarily think long-term. They're sort of looking in the here and now.
It's not really long-term though, because in order for certain levels of mounts to become available, you have to progress your node to a specific stage. In order for a certain level of crafting stations to become available, you have to progress the node to a certain stage. So there's plenty of incentives for people to be donating resources in order to progress the node.
But people could also just take what they have and go move to some other node that's already advanced, right?
Possibly.
Which is fine.
But that's not always
fine.
the case, because citizens get certain privileges that non-citizens don't. So that's not always the case. Sometimes
I'm just saying there should be probably some sort of. It shouldn't just be left up to sort of the honor system.
I don't think it is. I don't think that's it. I think that it's about, people are going to use resources. People aren't going to spend all of their time in the game accumulating something to not use it. That's not. There's not enough value. They won't last playing the game doing that. So they're going to be doing something with it. So.
Yeah. The cases where I see people trying to hoard would be if they're specifically trying to stop, let's say, a scientific node from becoming a metro so that there's no fast travel on the server. They're tying up resources so that a specific node won't advance. That could be a strategy where people would try and deplete resources and hoard them.
Well, which is an interesting, active community event, and that should be promoted.
Which, Lightward also pointed out, and this sort of makes sense in this context, that also part of that live stream was the comment that mayors can create contracts with the money they have in order to pay out for services rendered. So, I mean, they could also be just setting up, I guess, a system of paying out for resources. And then there's some sort of tax on top of all that, but which would probably be the easier, make more sense way to go. But to me, that would make more sense because the player's going to, at that point, feel like they're getting paid for it. So it's sort of a win-win. They get paid, and they also see their.
See, I think you're on the right track here, because I think that the risk is less that people are going to be going out and getting resources and hoarding them. I think it's more that people just don't care about going and farming resources, right? Like that ensuring that there is an incentive to go get resources other than just run around and fighting and making sure that you survive or doing whatever you feel like.
That's actually one of the things that I was hoping was going to be a little bit different about, this and the other game that we're covering, is the idea that it isn't just walk 50 meters outside of town and then start looking for metal outcroppings and that's how you mine, because that just looks ugly and dumb and I hate it and I'm done with it and I don't ever want to see it ever again. No, I like the idea that to mine you actually have to go to a place where ore is, rich in accessible, and in doing that you're going to need to bring a cart, even if it's just your little Red Rider wagon that you can carry maybe 100 pounds or so in or whatever, and bag or whatever, you can carry some extra stuff, not too terribly encumbered, but you're not going to be at running speed. One person could maybe kind of go out and gather a little bit at some place that's a little safer outside of town, maybe somewhere even within eye of the the watchtowers and stuff from the town nearby. So you've got a little bit of extra eyes on you. You're not going to get rushed by bandits. Okay. But when we're talking about like a larger scale infrastructure, like you're looking to get plate mail made for 20 people, that ain't going to be one guy going out with a Red Ryder wagon. You're setting up supply lines, you're setting up infrastructure, you're bringing, large carts, many armed people, some skilled gatherers. You're coming prepared. It's not just going to be this little one person going out and knocking on an outcropping and then moving to the next one business. That would be, if that's the way they do go with this game, that you're just knocking on outcroppings like that, you'll never see me come back, because I would not stand for that. The excitement, the idea of actually having to go to the mountain, find the best ore, sort that from just any old ore that you chunk out, and making decisions about that, making decisions about how you're actually going to get the stuff back. That's what makes things more exciting and meaningful to me.
That your party's quest is a mining excursion.
Yes.
To go get ore, not your party's quest is to go find the Holy Grail.
Yeah, and it should be meaningful. Like, getting resources like that should be meaningful. Something that you can't just grow in a farm inside town. There should definitely be some risk to it, but it's definitely not something anybody should really expect to do by themselves and make that much progress with. I mean, if you're just going and getting a backpack full of ore and then running back to town, how long is it going to take you before you're going to have something you can actually work with? And then once you do have enough that you can actually work with, it's like, great, you spent all this time. Meanwhile, a group of 10 people that work together have gone, 50 times further. So, I think the teamwork and community aspect of it is going to be one of the things that's really big. And I think you're going to see a lot of players and a lot of groups working together and actively coordinating to maximize their efforts within an area. Sure, they might be from rival companies within the node, but, if they work together, they recognize, we're all going to be able to get benefit, because if both of us are better than the next 10 nodes around, we're still getting all the business. So it's one of these like frenemy sort of relationships. I expect there to be a lot of that going on, especially the stuff that you've got to gather outside of town. Stuff you can do in, farms, or potentially, ranching and that sort of stuff, getting your tanning and stuff going. I can definitely see that being something that's also more of a team effort. Lower risk, you can have less hands on deck to be able to do that sort of thing, but you will still need to be able to guard and protect all of that. So, either it's got walls or it's got guards, but people are going to be involved with basically every form of crafting and gathering.
I think that leads into the question about the highest skilled players in each artisan class won't be masters of all.
That's great.
Right. And it was that answer was a little bit interesting, because I think previously and I think this is what the question was kind of getting at. I think the question was asking whether or not, we don't know all the subsets of each path, but, a blacksmith. So if you're a master blacksmith, does that stop you from being a master weaponsmith? And
is blacksmith even the mastery point, or is blacksmith just one of the tiers that leads up to one of the higher levels?
Right. And so that's what the answer is saying, is that it's whatever. What would that be? Processor. So you would be a master processor. And if you're a master processor, then you wouldn't be a master gatherer. Or what's the other one? It's gathering, processing, and
I don't know, marketing?
Is it is it crafting, processing, and gathering? So maybe crafter would be the overset of
I see what you're saying. The people that get the stuff, the people that make it usable, and then the people that actually use it to make something we can with.
And so
that makes sense.
Yeah, so you can't be a master of all three paths, but if you're a master of one of those, then there would be lots of subsets under there. It's not master of the subset that's pushing you away from the others. So
I guess a master blacksmith would be somebody that they know all the shapes, they know how to make the hardest and densest and best shapes and versions of everything, but they don't necessarily know how to fit the pieces to an individual or all the fine points to, balancing and shaping a weapon for one specific individual wearing a very specific gauntlet they go into battle with. Like that fine level of minutia. We'll leave that to the swordsmiths. All I know is, you asked me to make a plate of these specifications. Damn it, I'm going to make the best one you'll ever see. That's what I'm guessing a blacksmith is going to be, if it's like the highest evolution of it sort of thing. And that's really cool. Like, I like the idea that there's going to be these niches because it means everybody in a guild will actually have their own different place, and you'll be able to, have people learn from one another, overlap where it makes sense, is necessary, etc. Be able to recruit from other guilds when you see that you have deficiencies, or do some sort of skill trade sorts of things. I definitely see a lot of interest and a lot of opportunity. Then, of course, on top of that, if there's any specific guild bonuses that, like, not only are you the highest tier of armor crafting, but your guild bonus gives you these extra bonuses and stuff, then it's I think of like the Star Wars Galaxy system where you get a Wookiee and then just load them up with plus crafting equipment, and they just make the best stuff in the game. That you're going to be able to use all of your equipment, all of your skill mastery, access to the best level resources being provided to you by the entire rest of the infrastructure, and use all that training and all those specialized bonuses to make the absolute best stuff. That's a real interest to people that are into crafting. Being the top of the min-maxing chain is like, that's huge. So I think people will actually specify to that. Like, they'll have tens to hundreds of people working towards the infrastructure of making the best X, Y, and Z.
One of the questions that I asked that did not get answered was a follow-up to last month's info drop that we would be using like master gatherers to Stephen used the word spoil the resources from like a winter dragon, whatever the world boss is. You would need a master gatherer there in order to get the best resources from it. And that has me wondering about the roles of crafters during a raid. Like, we should expect that we're going to need crafters during sieges to help build siege engines and things like that. So I'm wondering if we're going to want to bring them along for raids. Maybe we will. I think this question was over 500 letters, so I was not able to even fit the whole question into the Twitch chat when I tried it this morning. But because part of it is wondering whether or not on a raid you might need crafters there, smiths, to build or craft gear directly from the mini bosses while you're at the raid. That could be a cool thing. In order to defeat the world boss, you need gear from the mini bosses in order to defeat the world boss. That could be a cool thing.
He just made me think of something hilarious. The dwarves and in the Hobbit, they get to where they're supposed to find the keyhole, and in the book they're there for a long time. It's not just that night that they happen upon it. But if they had brought some crafters along, well, a stonemason would have some of the acid required to weaken the stone, and they can just chip through it. And it's like, hey, we're in. No key required. It's just stone. Magic stone, great. I can work with that too. I'm a crafter. That's kind of what I think of with the idea of bringing crafters to raids. Getting past doors, getting over chasms and gaps, getting up cliff sides and stuff like that. Being able to craft extra pathways and extra ways to approach a situation. Being able to dig under something and undermine some enemy infrastructure. That's a really sort of fun idea to be able to do on a raid instead of just 40 people throwing their heads at a boss and all the enemies leading up to it. The idea of actually kind of manipulating the environment to get an advantage, to avoid certain things, to minimize a boss that would normally be a huge problem, that sort of stuff. I think that's great.
Yeah, and so you might need people to gather, people to process, people to smith the gear stuff, and then they might also want to have high level gear or good gear that is protecting them from damage and things like that. The other thing I'm wondering is whether or not, if that happens, whether or not they will be using tools. They'll be bringing along tools rather than bringing along weapons, right? Like they have to have specific tools in order to accomplish these things rather than.
So what you're kind
weapons.
of suggesting is that instead of building an encounter around a tank, healer, DPS role group, you'll build an encounter around let's assume that you do want those three, but you also need a gatherer, a processor, and a crafter on top of that, because there's more to the encounter than just managing the actual combat.
That's right.
Parts.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
You gotta rebuild the pylon and raise the bell or whatever, and then ding it to summon the boss or whatever.
Yeah, and it's open world, so it doesn't have to be limited to the raid, the 40-man raid that is there for combat. There could be other people like crafters involved because, that's how you get the best stuff from it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what seems to be implied. I don't know at what point you get the master gatherer there to loot the boss.
How long is it supposed to take to become a master gatherer? Or is this something that just about anyone could be?
I'm guessing
it'll take a while.
Yeah, I'm guessing it's going to be a similar progression to combat, to adventurer, but we have to wait on more information for crafters. We don't have a lot of information for that.
Well,
we should talk a little bit about Doggit, Peacat, and War Machine, since that's the topic of the discussion.
Well,
Did
yeah.
we mention that at all?
I don't think we did. So the Doggit and the Peacat were the two winners of the Kickstarter cat and dog contest thing.
The nice thing about the Doggit is that was Margaret's entry into the contest, so I'm kind of glad that won. I was saying before we went on that I actually voted for the P-Pup because I like the look of the P-Pup better than the Peacat. But I was kind of rooting for the Doggit as well. And I was hoping, I think I can't remember the name of the other exotic looking cat that I ended up voting for. Maybe it was like an Afghan type cat mix or something. I don't know. But Peacat was my second pick for the cat as well. So I'm glad if I didn't get the P-Pup, I would get the Peacat. So that's pretty good. I was happy. Did you guys vote?
No.
No, I actually mentioned that on Facebook that they didn't put like a Norwegian forest cat or a Maine Coon. So y'all can keep your little, medium hair things. I want a giant fluff ball.
Nice. Okay. And then Nero, you seemed pretty excited to see the not excited. That's probably too strong a word, but interested in seeing the War Machines.
No, it was excited in the context that they actually felt comfortable enough to show them being used in the game and actually be more than just like symbolic things and then the scripted behavior when one chunk hits one wall and that's it. Mm-hmm. So that it is excitement that they are technically at the level where they're confident showing that in game.
One of the cool things that they mentioned is that some of the trebuchets have a seat for someone to sit in and shoot crossbows from it in order to protect the trebuchet. So that's kind of cool. I probably would not mind being that person who would probably prefer that to direct
walking.
PvP. No, to direct PvP.
I think someone
person
who
to
worked
person.
on that project also worked on Planet Side 2. Actually, there's probably more than one. I know Maggie,
probably more than
because
one,
she was one of the developers community. But no, like I that very much reminded me of like Planet Side tanks. Actually, is like how you've got the primary driver gunner, and then you got your little secondary gunner that's able to help pick off infantry and stuff. So when they said it, I was just thinking to myself, oh, that's I see where they're going with it. Then they definitely mean this to be a it's not going to be a tank, but just pretend it is.
Right. I think that's part of the fun for me with Ashes of Creation is knowing that there's SOE Daybreak devs on, so you kind of see similar ideas from previous stuff, and we can assume that these devs are going to want to implement similar stuff that they've worked on before.
Yeah. And then it's coming from being informed from previous projects. It isn't just like, well, I saw this in Arc Age and I saw this in Dark Age of Camelot, and I saw it, and so I'm just gonna they've actually had experience working with this sort of stuff. So being able to approach like not just putting it in, but able to actually tune it and make it fun is something I have confidence in their ability for here.
Mm-hmm.
Before we wrap up, I did want to put a shout out. Been 3 or 4 months and 2 years since the release of Worlds Adrift, and this month it is reaching its end. Another open world sandbox with a building mechanic and unfortunately ambiguous goals. The short version, as was explained to me, is that they just couldn't keep up with Spatial OS updates because every update required them to completely refactor your code base. And you can't refactor your code base every time your back end comes with an update. So dead in the water, sadly. Technology screwed them. Like so many other games, the technology screwed them. And it's not something they can make an offline version of because so much of the stuff is tied to Spatial OS. So it is what it is. This is the end of it. I, wish it didn't have to go this way, but it's a hard lesson to have to learn.
Phantom, isn't Seed using Spatial OS? What other game is?
They are. Yeah.
Right.
They're still going.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just wondering what the if
well, I
it's
say they're still going.
issues.
There's been absolutely no sort of testing to it. They certainly they have plenty of screenshots and examples, but they also use it. So and it's more. It is, I guess, sort of a cross MMO simulation type experience. So it's interesting though with Improbable. At one time that was supposed to be sort of the big. They were the new kid on the block that sounded so cool. And I don't think has anything come out that. I'm trying to think of anything that's actually out there that is.
So if you go on the Improbable website, I believe they have a few different projects that are using it successfully, but it's definitely something where I feel like it's their technology is something that's still in kind of an early state here compared to if they're around in 10 years, what it's really going to be like and how well it's going to be able to run and what services it's going to be able to offer.
Sorry, it's like the same problem Lumberyard's trying to solve here, right? And we don't really have any good examples of like quality finished deployed products on Lumberyard at this point. It seems promising. It's just that, and in the future, whether these are the products that are used or not, multiplayer online games are all going to be totally cloud hosted. All of the multiplayer aspects are going to be abstracted out of the game dev part, and we will get there, just like we ended up at this point where nobody in their right mind builds a 3D graphics engine right now for their game, because we have Unreal and we have Unity and we have all of these other things that are available right now. This stuff is coming. There will be games out there running on these kinds of platforms. But just like with everything else, there are going to be a whole lot of failures along the way to get there.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Anything else for tonight?
I think there's plenty more, but some people
we
have games, so we need to wrap up, and we'll try and catch up next time.
I think we touched like 3 or 4 questions out of that whole thing. So definitely
I think we
more.
6 or 7 of them.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we will be back with this show in 2 weeks. And next week, of course, we'll be here with our Illyria show. So everyone have a good weekend. Thanks for watching. Thanks for joining.
See you later.